Yo. So with Doctor Who, it can be a very kind of subversive program. It can be quite up to your own taste about it. An episode one person may like, another person may not. So I thought of my next two videos, I'd give you my top 10 Doctor Who guilty pleasures. Now, slight bit of ruling on this one. Guilty pleasures, it can cover a range of different things. An episode, so I'm going to lay down some groundwork. Now, number one, it can be an episode that most people already love. It basically what I did for this list was look at each series of Doctor Who and choose out my one of my personal favourite episodes from each season or each series of New Who. Now, I have had lists before of my personal favourites and what I consider the best episodes of each series. Now, this one is going to focus personally on personal favourites. Now, as I said, the two may interlock for some points. There are some episodes that are already universally loved, and they may cross over. Or they may be episodes that people do consider good, but can often be overshadowed by the great episodes. So these are episodes that are either considered bad by some people, but I personally like them. Episodes that people do consider good, but are often overshadowed by other big episodes. Or just episodes that people just consider good in general. Which, now I'm going to have to split this into two videos, just in order for purposes of time. So this particular video will be choices 10 through 6, and then I'll do another one in the future that's 5 to 1. So here we are, starting off my top 10 Doctor Who guilty pleasure episodes. Number 10, Gridlock from Series 3. For Series 3, it was a toss-up between Gridlock or the Shakespeare Code. But I feel that Gridlock slightly edges the Shakespeare Code out, so that's what we're going with. The 10th Doctor and his new companion Martha Jones, he offers to extend the terms of their trip and take her to the future. So he takes her to the far future on the planet of New Earth, specifically in the city of New York. But what they find is that most of the population of New York is seemingly trapped on the motorway. Martha gets carjacked, and it's up to the Doctor to try and get her back, whilst also discovering a creature from his past that he kind of hoped he'd left long behind. Now, what I feel is great about this episode is that it's quite claustrophobic, as some great episodes of Doctor Who are. But they managed to work with that, giving each kind of separate claustrophobic pod of the cars its kind of own identity. It builds on previous Doctor Who series with the New Earth story, now kind of shown in the next chapter of that, and it also reintroduces a monster from the classic series, the Macra. So I do feel this one tends to be overlooked, and especially when you look at episodes like Blink in Series 3, but you know what, this is an underrated classic. Number 9, The Witchfinders from Series 11. Jodie Whittaker's first series of Doctor Who was up and down. She had some good episodes, she had some episodes that weren't so good, but this one I feel is rather underrated and deserves to be talked about more. The Doctor, Graham, Ryan and Yaz, they end up in the small village of Bilehurst Crag, near Pendle Hill. There they discover that the landowner, Becca Savage, is putting various people to death on account of being witches, aided by the King of England, King James, played masterfully by Alan Cumming. And it's kind of up to them to find out what's going on, strange happenings going on around the village, and find out how to stop the witch trials once and for all. Now, when the 30th Doctor was cast as Jodie Whittaker, and they mentioned they were going to do an episode of witch trials, I think it was fairly obvious to most of us, that the Doctor was at one point going to get accused of being a witch. I'm sorry, but if you cast the Doctor as a woman and then do an episode on witch hunts, yeah, that's just gonna happen. But I do feel this is one of those underrated episodes. I mean, I do love that the Doctor, in the time of the Stewarts, has to overcome so much more in regards to just her position. And Alan Cumming as King James, I admit's masterful. He is just brilliant in this episode. I mean, he's trying to do what he thinks is right, but even then, it's a struggle for him. And I'll admit, while I don't hear many people talk about it, I'll admit one of my favourite scenes is towards the end when they're lighting up the torches, ready to put whatever's whatever's behind it back in its place. I won't reveal it here. But then Graham, who has kind of been appointed the Witchfinder General by King James, he takes his hat and puts on the Doctor going, Morax Finder General back in command. I mean, that just to me shows so much respect. Like, he's been enjoying the respect that being the Witchfinder has had most of the episode, but then he realises, no, I'm not in charge. No. Doc, take over. It's an episode I don't really see people talk about much, and I feel it deserves it. Number 8, School Reunion from Series 2. This is one that when I posted it up saying that it was a Guilty Pleasure episode for me, people were like, what's guilty about it? It's a great episode. And yeah, I can see it is one of the better ones. It's just, when people talk about Series 2, they mainly talk about either the Cybermen episodes or the Satan Pit. Which, okay, are good episodes, but I feel this one needs to be talked about more. This particular episode sees the return of Elizabeth Sladen to the Doctor Who franchise, and also the return of K9, as both she and the Doctor are investigating mysterious happenings at a school run by Anthony Head. And he is just brilliant in this episode. I mean, I'd probably enjoy this episode a lot more now that I've finished Buffy, but yeah, just he owns the role of the villain here. He is just loving every scene he's in, and you know what, he's just brilliant. I mean, the Krillitanes, I'll admit, they're one of the weaker villains in terms of the show's history, but you know what, they're good here, and it's just great to see Elizabeth Sladen back in the role, seeing how she interacts with Doctor Number 10, and how she meets Rose Tyler. I mean, they have some great chemistry back and forth, kind of arguing with each other, but then when they get the hysterics about some of the Doctor's eccentricities, it's just brilliant. I personally love this episode, and I advise you, if you somehow skipped over it, I definitely say give it a shot. Number 7, The Lodger from Series 5. I feel this one mainly gets overlooked because the previous episode is considered one of the most beloved of the series, that being Vincent and the Doctor. But The Lodger and its sequel in Series 6, Closing Time, I feel are drastically underrated. I know people said they didn't like this one because they're not big fans of James Corden, but I feel he works well here. The setup, after seemingly losing the TARDIS and Amy thanks to some problems going on in the local area, the Doctor becomes a lodger for a man named Craig Owens, played by James Corden. And the rest of the episode is kind of James Corden having to deal with Matt Smith's eccentricities as Doctor Number 11, and just deal with his quirkiness, to which, imagine having the Doctor as a flatmate, that's gonna get a little awkward, even if it might be fun. You think about it and think, oh, that'll probably be fun, but then you realise some of his eccentricities and you're just like, okay, this is just getting weird. But even so, he does end up, in a sense, making his life better, even if Craig is somewhat reluctant to admit it. And yeah, I do feel that James Corden is... I feel people put too much hate on him for this, and I feel he really does a great job in this episode and Closing Time. Closing Time was also on my list, but sadly got pushed off. But you know what? The Lodger, I feel, is a great episode. And the final one I'm going to talk about here, my number 6 spot, The Next Doctor from the Specials years. Now, whenever I do my ranking of the Doctor Who Christmas specials, The Next Doctor always ends at the top. And people always seem to question that. They're just like, what? Like, why? I mean, okay, it's a good episode until the Cyber King shows up or whatever. But I personally think this is my personal favourite of the special series. I mean, I liked Planet of the Dead. I thought The Waters of Mars was okay, and the end of time I feel was a good send off for David Tennant. But the next Doctor, I think, is my personal favourite. I mean, you've got the basic plot of it. The Doctor shows up on Christmas 1851 and somehow encounters what seems to be a future version of himself, future incarnation of the Doctor, played by David Morrissey, along with a companion named Rosita, played by Valil Tishbalala. And I'm almost certainly mispronouncing that, I apologise. But then something seems off about this Doctor, and the David Tennant's Doctor has to work out exactly what's happened, who this Doctor is, and what's exactly happened to cause all this, as well as having to deal with a cyber invasion. I personally feel like this is an episode that people overlook so much for the Christmas specials. I've seen people put it so far down the list, but I think it's my personal favourite Christmas special, and it is my personal favourite of the specials year. So, yeah. So that's my numbers 10 through 6. I'll do another video later on detailing my top 5 Guilty Pleasure episodes, but there you go. 10 to 6. Gridlock, The Witchfinders, School Reunion, The Lodger, and The Next Doctor. Anyway, until I get round to the top 5, I'll see.